right, welcome back to From the Ground Up. This is a podcast for Dow Smith Company employees, clients, and friends. Dow Smith Company is a design build firm here in sunny Smyrna, Tennessee, with some saws and different things going on
hammer drill
outside.
on the table, and a hammer drill here in our new gig.
Yeah,
our extension.
So Dow Smith Company, we're a design build firm, and we design and build medical facilities, churches, commercial buildings. And today we are very fortunate and blessed to have our visionary, Dow Smith. Welcome back to your podcast that you built, like you designed and built all this. You designed and built this podcast.
Well, thank you. But I'm sitting there just gleaming at the hammer drill, and I may just get up and just to see what all it can do. I miss working with the hammer drill, and that's a cordless hammer drill too. So I love we got a hammer drill in our conference room. I like that.
How many conference rooms just have a hammer drill sitting right on the table? Well, so this is a special month for us and a special podcast for us. This month, and I'll include myself in that, but mostly you, celebrate 32 years in business. I think a lot of people who've listened to the podcast and read our blogs and some other things know, you started Dow Smith Company 32 years ago this month with a little red pickup truck, and that little pickup truck was your office and your sole piece of equipment, as you like to say. Maybe had a hammer drill in the bed of the truck somewhere.
It did.
But I think we could run through all the projects and all the memories and all those things, and that would be great. Maybe we should do that sometime. But today I wanted to talk to you about your own personal journey, and we're kind of tentatively titling this 32 Years of Wisdom, Struggle, and Why the Pharisees Were Wrong. So I think, over that time period, you've come to some conclusions about some things that anybody who's fortunate enough to be around you has had the benefit of you sharing those things. And so I'm going to shut up and just let you start dropping some knowledge on us here with the things that you've learned.
Yeah, I love the title. I think kind of wanted to make it maybe a little bit more R-rated than that, but we'll let that rest there. But yeah, I guess I do get maybe I get triggered when I just think Pharisees. I do. Right or wrong, I do. Which then also makes me think, because one of my phrases and mantras, where there's structure, there's freedom. And Joey used to quote, "The rules are there to protect us." And I totally get that. The rules are there to protect us. And where there's structure, there's freedom. Where I get a lot of trouble, though, is where those want to just think that the rule is more important than the intent of the protecting of whatever's trying to be protected. And so that's part of my energy that I bring to that and to the title. So as I think back through my 32 years, and it's been a great 32 years, and then where I'm at in my journey, I tell you what, the word that comes to me that has been hammering in my mind these last few days is flexibility. And that came to mind when I did NLP training with Gina. The one who has the most flexibility is the one who has the most influence and the most control. And man, that really set me back, because I love influence and I love control. And any person with a red-blooded ego probably feels the same way. So that's part of a big part of where I'm at today is flexibility. I don't have to have it my way, but try to have an understanding of what it is I'm trying to get to. I have a new appreciation for goals, how important goals are. And I just left my morning this morning was with Gino Wickman's True Self Mastermind. And the subject on that was making an impact, and how can we make a greater impact. So I share all that. Okay, well, how do Pharisees? Why does that get me all triggered up? And to be honest, part of that is I love cussing, and I don't know why that is. One of the things I learned, this was in Sandler's sales class. Words are very important. They are. But what we communicate, the words that we use, I think has a 30% or 25% impact of what's being said. But what has a much more impact is our tone and our body language.
How we make people feel.
That's a good point. It's how we make people feel, and the tone that what we say things in our body language has much more of a impact than the exact words that we use, which kind of makes you think, because I just went to go visit Mitchell last week in the Dominican Republic. Everybody there speaks Spanish, and Cindy and I can't speak too much Spanish, but Mitchell and Harris are really, really good at Spanish. But one thing I've learned when you talk to people, and particularly when we were talking to wait staff or various people, I learned if I just talked to them, knowing they couldn't understand any word I was saying, but they could see my body language and hear my tone, they understood enough of what I was trying to say. They really did. And then between hand gestures and stuff like that, they could figure out the words. So I picked up real quick. If you just speak from the heart and in body language, and then with a few points, you can communicate okay, good enough. So that it just learned me, yeah, words are important, but the other things are more important. So with that, right or wrong, there's just sometimes, and I like the phrase, I think we gave it to Tony, I like to, instead of calling them cuss words, I like to call them sentence enhancers. And maybe that's why I love hanging out with Tony, because he and I both can just cuss about things. And
very enhanced conversation.
We have very enhanced conversation.
Well, and I think this is all a way of dancing around how you feel about the Pharisees, right? And the some strong language you might have for that, but also the regulation of language and the right way and wrong way to do things and all that. When that's a phrase or even just a word that I feel like is used often in our office and is used often in our culture at DSC, where we say, well, we don't want to be a Pharisee about this. We don't, and I think if you don't understand the biblical reference, or even if you're just sort of new around the office, the first few times you hear that, what do you want people to understand when we say that?
That's a great, and so to me, the Pharisee is the rule keeper, and is the rule enhancer, so to say, and so to me, and Scripture is a very important part of my journey, and very much look and contemplate that and consume that daily. And I very much look at how Jesus moved and ministered, and I have picked up what I'm going to call his words are a whole different tone, and you can't hear tone when you read, but I'm sensing the tone that he had with the Pharisees was a whole lot different than the words and the tone that he had really with anywhere else.
It's almost antagonistic, right?
It is, and it had conflict as well too. I mean, it was point, counterpoint, and it was a conflict. It was, and I also did find it interesting how Jesus would enter to that conflict and then leave that conflict, and there's just a whole different tone to that. I noticed, and when he's in the Sea of Galilee area, there's just a whole different vibe. And when he's so I've noticed the geography, the context it was at had a huge difference in what he did and how he did it and how he said it. But man, throughout, every time he's encountering Pharisees, it wasn't a fun time for the Pharisee. It was not a good time for the Pharisee, and they usually scratch their head wondering what happened. So I do look at that and draw from that, but at the same token too, I want to give honor and respect to all people, to all life in that, and Jesus would have dinner with the Pharisees. You know, this morning in Luke 7, went to dinner with the Pharisee. He was a guest there. But then he got on and said, look, this harlot's washing my feet, and you haven't done anything. And then continued to pour more into that. And so...
they weren't real big fans of his feet getting washed by her either, right?
They were not... We're not, and I imagine.
And his point was like, "Well, what are you doing?"
That's correct. I imagine there was a lot of eye rolling and huffing and puffing and going on, and when I looked at that, I mean, there was a lot of words of affirmation and teaching from that, and so I try to apply that maybe too much into our context and into my context.
Well, so let's look at this. Maybe a good way to look at this would be over 3+ decades of Dow Smith Company. We've now developed what's called the Dow Smith Way.
We have.
And anybody who works here has a copy of the Dow Smith Way. Probably if you're a sub or even a client, you've probably seen a copy of the Dow Smith Way. It's got every position in the company, and then all their sort of roles, responsibilities, but also sort of checklists of here's the things you should do daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly. And I think some people could look at that and say, oh, this is a rule book.
That's correct.
And I think that's where you've been very clear from the beginning. This is not a rule book.
This
is not
right. The plan of this is for us this should give you structure for 80% of what you got to do, which would take 20%. So that leaves the other 20% of you got to make it up as you go, or you got to be creative to whatever the situation is before. So that's a great point, because I want us to have a structure of, okay, this is about what we're going to have to do most of the time. If it falls in that, here's how we do it. But there's still freedom in that, and it still requires creativity beyond that. And to me, it is not a rule book. It's a checklist.
Well, it's 32 years of wisdom, struggle, and so on, right? And experience and things that we've learned what works and what doesn't work.
And what I also hope is our process becomes a port of wisdom. And I sure don't want it to be looked at as a rule book, but I want it to be, this is the way we are distributing wisdom amongst all of us. And then from that, we'll ask, hey, this really didn't work this year. This process may have worked or doing it this way last year. We're going to have to do that, because we just look at what's available, specifically from a technology standpoint, and how we're reviewing and logging submittals to processing permits and all like that. So it's going to have to be continuously updated. That's going to be the new challenge. That's the current challenge right now is keeping it updated.
When you kind of alluded to it earlier, but there is the letter of the law, and then there's the spirit of the law. And I think probably even as the Dow Smith Way gets updated, the spirit of the law is pretty much the same, right?
I would agree with that.
But Joey and I were just talking about, I hope so. Attract and retain the right people, provide an exceptional, unique experience. You know, those sorts of things are always kind of baked into the Dow Smith way, no matter whether you change this instruction or whatever, right? So it'd be possible to cling to the instruction without really understanding why you do that way.
And the intent being is to serve. These are all ways better so we can better serve and be better servants. And to be a good servant today will look much different than next year, and it looks a whole lot different than it did last year. But these are all ways where we can consistently deliver good service and be consistently good servants.
Why does that always win out for you? Maybe strategically, but also spiritually. Why does service? Why is that always the guiding principle of what we do?
Great question. And so today, and if you would ask me this maybe last week, I probably wouldn't have had an answer, or for sure. But here's what today is. I just finished the book Letting Go by David Hawkins. And the key on what that is you got to let go. You got to let go of your fear. Whatever's creating fear, you got to release that fear. You got to release that shame. Surrendering feels like losing. Mm-hmm. But the surrendering that feels like losing brings a full life. And that sounds so counterintuitive, but it is. Which is also similar to the teaching of Richard Rohr. He calls it falling down, falling upward. You know, and it's so upward. If we the path to go up is a path of descent, and so somehow in that of surrendering, which feels like losing, raises everybody up.
Well, and when you think about service, you think, oh, well, if I give that to somebody, I won't have it anymore. When in fact, it's actually, that's the only way to keep it.
And it comes back.
Right.
It comes back. It goes back to washing feet. To me, that's the ultimate example of service is washing feet. Who wants to wash feet? But boy, the return or reward of that is immense.
Who wants to clean up a job site, right? Probably nobody, but we've got techs that have mastered that. And when you walk on to that job site, it's like, oh my gosh.
It looks wonderful.
Yeah, a client feels better. I think all the subs feel better. Our folks that are there feel better.
Well, and
all out of that act of service, right?
Correct. And you mentioned the cleaning and kind of my felt like I did my best work and best thinking was when I was sweeping the floors. It's just you can catch so much stuff and you see so much stuff, and just sweeping the floors itself would make me so much sharper and so much better, and clarity and things like that. So I got a lot of great members of just sweeping the floors.
Well, and that's almost a monastic type activity, right? Like the monks that would just sweep the floor all day. And in doing that, you're doing kind of a thankless job, right? And I think we probably do a lot of things, if you look at a lot of things in the Dow Smith way, they're not flashy, things that you'd get a whole lot of credit for doing. But by doing those, you're contributing to serving and ultimately making all of us better, probably.
It's serving the greater good. To me, we do all these things for the greater good, and the greater good of the company, but also hopefully more the greater good of our community and those that are around us.
How much now, 32 years in, does that mean to you, maybe in a way that it didn't mean before?
More, for sure. I mean, to me, it's just it's a big reason why I get up every morning and want to come turn left on Hazelwood and go to Sam Hager Street, and now come up here, is hopefully just have an impact, a positive impact, for the greater good of our neighbors.
Well, you've had over those years, it's probably, you couldn't calculate it. I mean, you've had positive impact on hundreds of clients and all the people that work in all those buildings where their building matches their mission. You've had the 36, 37 of us who are fortunate enough to work here and our families. And then I think, you look at things like the Smyrna High Field House or the Smyrna Elementary outdoor classroom / stage and things like that you've we started here about Pharisees, but really I know your heart, and your heart is that kind of service that's made our people better, our clients better, our community better. A lot of students in this community have better lives because of your vision for what we're supposed to do.
Thank you, Taylor.
Anything else to say about Pharisees?
We'll do that on the next round. We'll continue that, or in our book.
All right. Well, I appreciate you more than you know, but I'll always let you know, because I really do appreciate our relationship and everything you've done for the company and our clients and our community, and for just lending a little time to be on the podcast today.
Taylor, it's mutually felt. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you all for listening.